A year ago, I made a video on Francisco Goya's most troubling series, Black Paintings, and more specifically, the work Saturn Devouring His Son. However, among those black paintings, one of them is perhaps even creepier than the famous Roman god. But before delving into that artwork, I want to explore with you one of Goya's strangest and most fascinating subjects. For this year's Halloween, here's Goya's Witches. But before delving into that, I want to take a moment to encourage you to subscribe and to check out my Patreon. I mention everybody in the credits of each video who at least give me $1 per month. That's like 50 cents per video. And if you feel extra generous, I give these postcards out for anybody who gives me $10 per month or over. This one is the first one I ever sent. It's Edward Hopper's Nighthawks, and every month it's a different painting by a different artist, so check it out if you're interested. I've covered Goya's Witches in the past, notably in the series Los Caprichos, where Goya criticizes the medieval beliefs of his contemporaries, notably that witches exist. Goya was extremely influenced by the ideas of the Enlightenment, and so were his patrons. The Duchess of Osuna was one of these patrons, and she commissioned a series of paintings depicting witchcraft. One of these paintings, which most clearly demonstrates the ideas behind these paintings, is titled The Bewitched Man. It's the depiction of a scene from the Spanish play The Man Bewitched by Force by Antonio de Zamora. The subject is Don Claudio, and the reason why he looks so tormented is because he was made to believe that if this lamp was to turn off, he would die. He therefore rushes for his life to fill the lamp with oil. Notably, you see dancing donkeys in the background, a symbol of idiocy which will return in many other paintings. The reason why these donkeys are present is to make fun of Don Claudio's irrational beliefs, something Goya would dedicate Los Caprichos to. However, one of the interpretations behind the Bewitched Man, the one I find the most compelling, is that Don Claudio represents the church or members of the clergy. These men who dedicate their lives to preaching their beliefs, almost as if their lives depended on it, really do believe in what they're saying. If the lamp or the light symbolizes religious ideas or irrational beliefs, Don Claudio's zealousness pushes him to keep the flame burning. The symbol of the donkey returns in this painting depicting witches in flight. You see two men completely terrorized, though they can't see what they're terrorized by. One of them is laying on the floor with his ears covered, while the other has a blanket over his head as he runs away with hand gestures designed to repel evil. Above them, 3 witches have kidnapped a naked man and seems to be biting into his body. The witches are wearing carrozas with flames on them, meaning they've been condemned as witches to be burned at the stake, a situation which will be seen once again in Los Caprichos. These ridiculous men genuinely fear the presence of the witches. However, they aren't real, and the fact that they're floating in the dark void above them attests to that. These witches only exist in their heads. They're only superstitions. This brings us to one of my favorite depictions of witches by Goya, the Witches Sabbath, also made for the Duchess of Osuna. The details in this painting are horrifying, and the more time you spend looking at it, the more you notice them. The bats, for example, are a small part of the details that add to the spookiness of the scene, but if you look around the priest-like goat in the middle of the Coven of Witches, you start seeing more graphic elements. If we start on the goat's left, it's reaching out to a woman holding a healthy-looking baby. However, we can assume that this baby won't stay healthy for very long. Right under it, a bony skeletal child is being held by one of the witches. Next to her, another witch seems to be laying on top of a toddler whose legs we see popping out of her scarf. At this witch's feet, the corpse of a child lays alone, rejected from the ritual circle. Right above it, slightly further in the distance, there's something even more terrible than a child's corpse. 3 corpses of babies are being hung by the neck, one behind another, on a stick. Goya didn't hold himself back to make a gruesome picture of baby-killing witches. Unlike the Witch's Flight or the Bewitched Man, the Witches Sabbath doesn't make fun of people who believe in witches. Or does it? There isn't a donkey here to symbolize stupidity, and if anything, someone who would have actually believed in witches seeing this painting might double down on their fear. Perhaps Goya was trying to inspire fear. I find it hard to believe the contrary, but I can't really figure out why. Perhaps he was exploring the ways in which superstition terrified the common folk and was trying to find ways to apply this to his art. This finally brings us to the black painting, which, to me at least, is even creepier than Saturn Devouring His Son. Just like the painting we just spoke about, it's also titled The Witches Sabbath. However, this one is extremely different. A priest-like goat seems to be leading the ceremony. However, this time it's silhouetted. Behind it, a tightly held group of women, perhaps some men too, represent different figures, sometimes creepier than the goat itself. The whole atmosphere of the artwork is eerie, the long horizontal format, the dark restricted color palette, the overwhelming cluster of figures. Why is this painting so effective at being creepy? Well, here, evil isn't depicted by hanging babies or by biting on a corpse or feasting on a body, but it's implied. There isn't much to say about this painting because we don't really know what's happening here, but we know it's bad. We know it's terrifying, but we don't know exactly what's going on. And you know what can be more terrifying than anything you could ever think of? The unknown, because only the unknown has the possibility of being creepier than your creepiest thoughts. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching. Thank you for liking if you have already. And I'd like to thank especially you, Design Alright, Kohler, and every other patron for supporting the channel. If you also want to support the channel, check out patreon.com/thecanvas.